Hi, it's Laura from Your Little Sisters Productions, and I just wanted to hop in and give a quick introduction to this video because when I originally wrote the script and recorded the audio, I had only seen the last 4 seasons of the Vampire Diaries through one time. However, while editing, I started rewatching the last 4 seasons, and I discovered that some of my more harsh and negative opinions of the show actually shifted a bit more in the positive on a second viewing. I still stand by most of what you're going to hear in the video. However, the more harsh or more negative things that you might hear in here, I've actually changed my mind for the better on. With all that being said, I really hope you enjoyed the video. Let us know what you think in the comments below and give that like button and subscribe button a smash if you liked what you heard today. Now on to the video. I love The Vampire Diaries, but as much as I love watching and discussing it, I also have a major problem with it. And that is, I don't really like seasons 5 through 8 of the show. Hi, I'm Laura from Your Little Sisters Productions, and this is my video rant about why I dislike the last 4 seasons of arguably one of my favorite shows. Shout out to our avatar artist Lindsay K. Her website and Instagram will be in the description box below. Like many people when introduced to a new show that is already finished, I happily binge watched the first 4 seasons of The Vampire Diaries. And then, after a short break due to burnout, I started season 5. And all I really remember from that initial attempt of getting through that season was boredom. Just complete boredom. I think I got through 3 or 4 episodes before I decided to just start the whole series over again from the beginning. But by the time I got back to season 5, the same thing happened again and again and again. It wasn't until last year in 2024 that I finally sat down and resigned myself to finishing this show no matter what it took. And I finally got through the last 4 seasons. And sometimes I kind of wish I hadn't. Oh, Jeremy. I have to be honest, I don't remember absolutely everything that happens in the last 4 seasons, especially since I've only seen them all the way through just once so far. But what I do remember, I'm not the biggest fan of. And one of those things was the feeling as though they didn't quite know what to do with Jeremy. That is one of my biggest pet peeves in writing, when there's a character that just seems to be there, floating around with no real sense of purpose in the story. They bring him back from the dead, and I know Elena loves him because he's her brother and all, but I really felt as though he didn't have a strong purpose in the story at large near the end. When he leaves the show to go be a hunter elsewhere, I didn't feel any sadness at seeing him go. Rather, I felt as though it was past time for his character to have some purpose, even if it was far away from everyone else. Oh my goodness, I cannot describe just how boring I found this character to be. Every time he was on screen, I had the urge to skip through it. I don't know if it was the writing, the acting, the direction the director was trying to get for the character, a combination of the above, but it did not work for me. I found him boring, bland, and not at all intimidating, despite all the terrible things he does. He performs horrifying experiments on vampires, including turning someone he personally knew into a vampire just to run experiments on him. He teams up with the Travelers and traps Damon and Enzo together in a really sick experiment, and he lies to Catherine about trying to help save Nadia. All of these things are pretty messed up, and yet somehow still boring. I honestly don't have that much more to say about him. He was a boring character, a dull villain, and I was happy when we were able to move on from him to the next big bad of the show. Look, I am a Damon and Elena fan. Don't get me wrong, I love Stefan and Elena together, but I was also a fan of the slow burn, will they, won't they, that we had with Damon and Elena as well. It felt as though once they were together, though, the writers were a bit unsure how to go about writing them. Or maybe they did know and they wanted to make them a couple that people shouldn't want to fight for. Damon and Elena were not seen just living life together very often, going on dates, etc. They were toxic and they kept things from each other, and they were both really bad boyfriend girlfriend to each other. And then they break up. And then they get back together again and break up and so on. I have heard some rumors that the original plan all along was for Elena and Stefan to eventually get back together by the end. But when Nina Dobov's contract ended at the end of season 6 and it didn't renew, they had to pivot their plans and keep her with Damon at the end because there simply wasn't time for her and Stefan to rekindle their romance. I'm not sure how true that is, but it is something I've heard quite a few times over the years, and it honestly makes sense to me given the storylines the writers put Damon and Elena through before then. I feel as though once they became an item, I started to root for them less and less as time went on. One of my least favorite storylines involving the two of them was when Elena had Alaric compel her to forget falling in love with Damon and any good memories attached to him. And then, of course, Damon wasn't actually dead, and he comes back to an Elena who only remembers the bad things Damon ever did and is dating someone new. The only part of it I did like was seeing flashbacks of when they were together and going on cute dates, which I think we should have been seeing from the very beginning of their relationship. And the whole back and forth of whether Damon will become a human with Elena or not, and him going off the rails and hurting people every time he gets his feelings hurt, and Elena justifying it for him, just, ugh. I am not a fan of how they write them as a couple once they're together. Look, I think the idea of Enzo at first was fine. The problem I have with him comes in later, when it feels as though he didn't really have a place or purpose in the show. They tried a few different things with him. The first, of course, being the betrayed friend of Damon who was tortured for decades. Then at some point, he seemed to be primed to be Caroline's next boyfriend. Then he turns his humanity off when he finds out Damon got rid of Maggie many years ago, dies, comes back, and here's where one of my main questions with his character comes in. When he dies this first time, he has his humanity off, and it seems to continue to be off while he's a ghost because he's still tormenting Damon and Elena and Stefan and bothering Bonnie. But after he comes back to life and we see him in season 6, his humanity seems to be turned back on, though he does still take some human lives here and there. But he seems to be friends with Caroline and Elena, even doing Caroline's bidding of getting ice for a party and having breakfast with her, and not ripping her head off when she tries to boss him around on how to live his life in order to be her friend. But when exactly did he flip his switch back? When did he stop being upset at Damon for the Maggie situation? And how did he become the only one still trying to get Damon back? And why is he okay being bossed around by Caroline if he was no longer being set up to be her love interest? Then, of course, there's the very, very out of left field plot line where Enzo is in love with Damon and Stefan's mom, only to eventually become Bonnie's love interest and ultimately die, unable to be brought back from the dead like almost every other character that Bonnie brings back, but whatever. I don't hate the character or the thought of Enzo in general, but his whole arc over the show just seems to show me that they brought him on, liked him so much they wanted to keep him around, but they never really figured out exactly where and how he fit, so they just threw everything they could at him until the show ended. As hard as it can be to let go of a character you grow to love, if they don't fit, sometimes the best thing to do is let them go and move on. This is another part of the later seasons that I don't remember very much from, which honestly isn't a good sign. I do remember that it ends up being a plot point that keeps Stefan and Caroline apart for a long time, and I think Damon and Stefan apart as well. That, and I have a theory that the Huntress character was originally conceptualized as one of the Petrova doppelgangers, mostly because Damon says this line at some point about how the Huntress looks exactly like his girlfriend in a coma, which always made me wonder if Nina had signed on to do season 7, would she have played yet another iteration of the doppelgangers? And if yes, would I be writing this section about how I didn't like how many different versions we see of the doppelgangers, just how many doppelgangers can somehow find a way to be immortal and meet up all in one lifetime? Or would I have liked the storyline more? All of that to say, I found the Huntress to be yet one more forgettable villain in a long line of forgettable villains in the later seasons. Look, I know. I'm complaining about an age difference love story on a TV show with a bunch of supernatural immortals who fall in love with teenagers, but this one really bothers me in ways that the others don't nearly as much. Alaric starts the show off as their high school teacher. He dates Elena's Aunt Jenna and eventually becomes Elena and Jeremy's guardian until Elena turns 18. So, this fully grown, widowed man who is in charge of teenagers both at work and in his personal life eventually falls in love with one of the teenagers he taught high school to, who was friends with the teenagers he was living with and looking after. I know she's a surrogate for his and Joe's twins, and he's super grateful to her for carrying them and becoming their mom. But to actually fall in love with her and want to be with her in a romantic sense, from what I remember, we don't actually see Caroline and Alaric kiss or get romantic with each other, but he does confess how he feels about Caroline a few times, and it just makes me give him the side eye, honestly. I'm just so glad that Caroline seemed to never return those feelings and that they never officially get married. When Elijah, an original vampire, gets daggered, his compulsion over Catherine goes away. When Stefan becomes human, all the compulsion he did also gets undone. But when Alaric becomes human again, his compulsion over Elena and her memories of Damon stays put. As much as I hated the storyline of her erasing her memories and refusing to get them back, even once Damon comes back, I hated this inconsistency even more. Maybe they try to explain why that is in the show, but I don't remember if they did or what that explanation was. But once you establish how a magic system works, unless something major happens to change it for some reason, I just feel like it should remain consistent. All in all, while there might be an episode or short story arc here and there that I enjoyed from the last four seasons, i.e., Damon and Bonnie bonding in their alternate dimension place and becoming best friends, I love their bond in the last few seasons. And some of the humor that happens now and then I enjoyed. Overall, when I'm in the mood to watch some Vampire Diaries, though, I mostly just stick to the first four seasons. It sometimes feels weird calling it one of my favorite shows when I tend to largely ignore the entire last half of it. But what do you guys think? Do you enjoy the last four seasons, or are you more like me and a staunch rewatcher of the first half? And what's your favorite storyline from the Vampire Diaries? Thank you so much for watching. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Remember to give us a like and hit that subscribe button if you like our videos and want to see more. And I'll see you in the next one. As I was about to record this video, I learned that the author of the book series The Vampire Diaries, L.J. Smith, passed away. I know the show varied greatly from her books and vision, but without her efforts, we wouldn't have any of it. Rest in peace, L.J. Smith.